Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Saturday, the 19th of July. That makes this the news for Friday, the 18th of July, day 1241 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv, coming to you from this major European capital that is currently under siege. We are under air alert, and air defense has been active. So you guys might hear a few pops and bangs in the background, though things seem to have quieted down now. I just got a screenshot of a radar map that shows Ukrainian drones by... just take a look. Whoops. Right, just take a look. Those are all the Ukrainian drones heading out of Ukraine and into Russia right now. There's got to be a couple hundred. Looks like a big one. So we'll see tomorrow or Monday on what is being targeted there. So the peeps are coming in. How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Jackie. Hey, Bjorn. Nightshade. Pugga Mahone. Chris Carter. PH. All the peeps are here. There's Derek Sands. How's everybody doing? Moscow's under drone attack. Are the airports closed, Nightshade? Do you know? Hey, Dawn. Hey, Little Red. Hey, Renee Herman. Hi, John. Hey, Richard Prexis. Hey, Feisty, you back again? Nice to have you around. We might need the help again. All right. So, guys, this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv. Last night we saw, in terms of missile and drone strikes on Ukraine from the Russian Federation fired 35 drones at the territory of Ukraine, of which the Ukrainians intercepted or shot down 17 of them for only a 50% interception rate. Less than that, 48.5%. And it is curious as to why that interception rate drops so much when it's a small attack. Now, why is it such a small attack? Why did we see these very small attacks this week? I think it's because Keith Kellogg was in Kyiv, right? General Keith Kellogg, Trump's envoy to Russia and Ukraine on the war, was in Kyiv. And so it looks like the Russians kind of left us alone the last couple days. Hey, Van, even that big attack the other night of 401 drones and missile, that did not target Kyiv. We didn't hear much noise here. But we are anticipating a noisy night tonight. That's the anticipation. We'll see if it comes to fruition. For their part, the Russian Ministry of Defense said that they shot down 75 Ukrainian drones over 10 territories of the Russian Federation last night. In terms of the front line, Russia is very nearly at 18.9% of the territory of Ukraine. Very close to it. 18.89 after adding another 3.5 square kilometers this past week. Just got them to 18.89% of the country. So less than a 0.01% change over the last week. The front line is not really moving, except maybe in Sumy, where the Russians appear to be facing encirclement along various points of that. Now, that's a fairly sizable front line. I'm not suggesting that all the troops in the Sumy incursion are about to be surrounded. I'm not saying that. However, in the town of Kondrativka, it appears that members of the 155th Marine The 155th Marines of the Pacific Fleet are surrounded, and they are facing surrender, retreat, or destruction. And that is not, and apparently that is not the only settlement along that Sumy border where that is the case. There are at least 3 incursion points where it appears that the Russians are facing encirclement and are in need of a tactical withdrawal if they want to save their skins. The problem is, as a Russian soldier, you can't tactically withdraw. There is no retreat. There is no surrender because you got Akhmat or Wagner PMC kind of guys back there waiting to shoot you if you try to retreat or run from the battlefield, right? Hey, Maria. Oh, you know who I didn't see tonight? Is M. Fuller here? Is M. Fuller in? Did she come in? I want to thank M. Fuller, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. And we were without a sponsor. I have no sponsors for next week, guys. So if anybody wants to sponsor live, the PayPal's in the description. So thank you, M. Fuller, for really coming through for us. I really appreciate it. The Russians saw marginal advances in the Crimea line. But despite heavy offensive efforts in Chasiv Yar and Toretsk, there have been no advances in the last week. Down in the Pokrovsk direction, it appears, what does this say here? There is an increased incidence of glide bombs. Those glide bombs, those are those old dumb World War II bombs that the Russians stick some fins and a GPS guidance system on, and then they can turn that dumb bomb, like a JDAM, like a US JDAM, same thing. They can turn that dumb glide bomb into a precision weapon. And these glide bombs, these CAB or FAB glide bombs of the Russian Federation, can be 500 kilograms. That's 1,000 pounds, more than 1,000 pounds, right? 1,200 pounds of TNT. They can be 1,000 kilograms. That's over a ton. They can be 3,000 kilograms. Now, the problem is when they get to be that heavy, you need a heavy bomber to deliver them. There aren't that many planes that can carry those big 3,000 pound glide bombs. But there are some, and they have used them. They used a 3,000 pound glide bomb on Sumy back it was about a year ago. Yeah, because it was right before the Kursk incursion that was launched from Sumy. And it was that buildup of equipment and personnel that the Russians were targeting with that giant fucking bomb. Goes off like with like an atom bomb mushroom cloud. That's the kind of reaction you get. Now, I'm going to lead with this story because it's widely unreported, and I think that it is extremely revealing of what's happening inside the Russian Federation. So this is all according to Izvestia and some other outlets. But Izvestia, which is a Russian newspaper, is reporting that the Armiya 2025 defense contractor weapons showcase, the flagship defense contractor weapons platform showcase of the whole year for the Russian Federation, has been privatized. It's become now dig it, until last week, they were advertising this big showcase with 800 exhibitors, over 800 exhibitors, 3 days long. And now the event is not even on the venue's event calendar. The official word from the Russians is that it has been made private. It is invitation only, not open to public. However, the Ukrainian propaganda channels are on top of this thing, saying that they canceled it because they're afraid of Ukrainian drones. And why wouldn't you be? Right? One of those I'll tell you, the Ukrainians put letters together that Americans would never put together. How exactly do you pronounce Lyutyu? It's a terrible word. I don't know what it's supposed to mean, but it describes one of the new long-range missile hybrid drones of the Ukrainians. And one of those just hit, thanks, Todd. One of those just hit Patriot Park, which is a military-themed park outside of Moscow. And this missile drone hybrid of the Ukrainians hit the tank exhibit at Military Park, Patriot Park, which is either a wildly symbolic coincidence for a missile that went off target or exactly the message that Ukraine wanted to send. Anyway, so this big show, now look, Russian weapon sales are way down. I think the last number I saw was 46% year over year. And last year was down about 40% from the year before. So you're talking about, right, like Russia used to be the second largest weapons exporter in the world behind only the United States. Right now, they're rounding out the field at third, and they're probably going to slide to fifth before the year is over. So people are not buying Russian weapons. They see how they perform on the battlefield, and who the fuck wants them? At the aerospace conference in United Arab Emirates about 6 months ago, the Russians didn't write a single contract for a fighter jet or bomber. Not a single contract. Nobody is interested. And everybody is watching as Russia fails on its deliveries to its former customers, right? India ordered a bunch of S-400 systems. Did they ever get them? No, because you can't count on Russia. Russia is overcommitted in Ukraine, and they can't do anything but fund themselves. And very shortly, it's looking like they're going to run out of money to do that. So it's worth pointing out that this annual showcase has never been canceled. It went on right through COVID. Now, legitimately, this year, it's only 3 days. Normally, it's a full week. But it's been scaled back during the war from a week to 5 days, now to 3 days. The Kyiv Post is reporting that Ukrainian sites like Militarnia believe that the event was canceled over fears of long-range Ukrainian strike capabilities, as we just saw with the strike on Patriot Park. Russian industry is in freefall. The defense industry is propped up by its internal defense spending. But the fact that China, India, Iran, North Korea, lots of allies from Africa, don't have this weapons showcase to go to and place orders for weapons is and if it really was canceled because of fear of Ukrainian drone strikes, when the economy is in such desperate need of any kind of export revenue it can get. India has traditionally been a good weapons customer for the Russians. You're right. You're absolutely right. Although increasingly, it does appear that the Indians are moving more NATO-based, more Western-based. But we'll see what happens there. Either way, no matter how you cut it, it's a bad sign for the Russian Federation and for its defense manufacturing base, which even at the height of the war economy, we are seeing companies go bankrupt. We just saw what did they make? They made mortars. They made a particular kind of mortar round. And I forget the name of the company, but a big manufacturing concern down in Krasnodar Krai just declared bankruptcy, as I reported about 2 weeks ago. And their only customer is the Russian MOD. And they forced the sale of their product at less than cost. So what happened? The business produced its product as long as it could, And now the company is bankrupt, and there'll be no more of those mortars for the war effort. That's done. In terms of the economic outlook for Russia, things are not good as the EU passed the 18th sanctions package. So all the objections of Fico and Slovakia were finally overcome. They were bought off with guarantees, price guarantees for cheap natural gas through, I think, 2027, something like that, 2027, 2028, for the next few years, while they evolve their own secondary sources for energy products. Which they already had 3.5 years to do. If they hadn't listened to Putin's bullshit and done something about it like every one of their neighbors did, they wouldn't be crying now. But of course, Slovakia and Hungary are very much in Putin's pocket. Now, other key elements. I think there's two key elements of the sanctions package we saw today. A new methodology is being floated to determine what the price cap for oil should be. And that price cap is to be set at 15% less than the average daily rate of the last 3 months. So you look at the last 3 months at what oil is selling for on the open market, you reduce it by 15%, and you get the cost, the maximum cost under sanctions of a barrel of Urals crude, which today is just about $45. If you apply that formula, why are they doing this? They're doing this because we're living in a world where oil prices are falling. Even with that minor spike over the Iran potentialities, the price of oil has come right back down. I think I saw West Texas Intermediate crude was trading at about, I want to say $67 a barrel the last I checked. Does somebody want to check the per barrel price of West Texas Intermediate, WTI, or Brent, North Sea Brent? I think they were both under 70. So as the price of oil drops in this world, as we approach as very rapidly the global recession that's about to be caused by Trump's trade wars, blossoms into full-on global recession. Even now, as the Q2 numbers are being crunched, we should expect to see some countries declaring that they are, in fact, in recession following 2 standard quarters of negative growth. Where does Russia get all the Shahed drones from? Would anybody like to answer this person's question? Where does Russia get its Shahed drones from? Hello, Alice. Iran. They make them. These days, they're mostly making them. The Russians produce about 5,400 Shaheds in country every month today. And since the altercation with the United States, where it's unclear how many Shaheds are still coming in from Iran. But as late as last month, the Russians were still importing them as well, though that source may have been cut off at this point. Okay. I'm very proud of everybody. Look at how everybody who listens to this channel regularly was just like, Iran, or they make them themselves. Very nice, everybody. Pat yourselves on the back. If you do listen to this channel and you couldn't answer that question, I'm very disappointed in you. Pay attention. Okay. So let's see here. So we got a price cap, a new price cap methodology for the Russian oil sanctions, $45 a barrel. So it'll be interesting to see now how Russia responds as increasingly the shadow fleet is being interdicted and being sanctioned. In fact, as part of the EU sanctions yesterday, another 77 shadow fleet vessels have been sanctioned, bringing the total number worldwide up to over 400 of the Shadow Fleet vessels currently sanctioned. We'll start with the easy questions. Okay, we haven't done pop quizzes here before, so we'll start with easy questions. Is Papa Don here? Hey, Papa. How you doing, buddy? If you don't follow Papa Don, you should. He's a funny fucking guy. All right, now 2 critical details of the the 18th EU sanctions package against Russia. $45 a barrel oil and a ban on all Russian pipeline gas. Shutting down Nord Stream. No more gas comes into the continent that way. By the end of next year, Europe will be free of all dependency on Russian oil and gas. That is the goal of this sanctions package. Now, further to that, 22 Russian banks and credit institutions have been removed from the SWIFT banking system. That makes life hard. Sanctions on 30 plus individuals and entities, including 2 Chinese banks that have conducted trade with Russia contrary to sanctions. Now this EU sanctions package against the Russian government and elements of its banking system comes almost at the same time as the most strenuous set of sanctions against cybercrime in the history of the UK is put in place, as announced today by David Lammy, the Defense Secretary or the Minister of Defense for the United Kingdom. So the UK today acknowledged the reality of ongoing Russian cyber and hybrid warfare that Russia is waging across the world, and particularly against the people of Great Britain. The UK specifically addressed the threat to themselves with sanctions of 18 GRU officers and 2 units of the GRU. Moscow is currently under attack, yes. As is Kyiv, right? So karma's a bitch. Now, in their announcement today, the UK cited cases of cyber attacks against UK infrastructure, the attempted murders on British soil of people like Sergei Skripal and his daughter, who were attacked with a Russian nerve agent by a Russian FSB operative. Or GRU operative. Sorry, the FSB is more like the FBI in the US or MI5 in Great Britain. And then the GRU is more like the CIA or MI6 in Great Britain, right? So we're talking about GRU officers. Of those sanctioned, it included Unit 29155 of the GRU, who was responsible for Sergei Skripal's attempted assassination and his daughter's attempted assassination, as well. Well, we'll talk about them in a minute. If you follow this channel closely for any time, you should be able to identify 29155. Can anybody remind me of other acts of sabotage, murder that these people are connected to? Unit 26165. These guys were responsible for the missile attack on the Mariupol Drama Center, where over 600 Ukrainian civilians had taken shelter during the early siege of Mariupol. And these are the people who signed the death warrant for those 600 elderly women, children, and local men. These people are accused of malign activity, cyber attacks against UK infrastructure, operations against Ukraine, and historic attempts, quoting the document here, historic attempts to harm British citizens. The GRU spies, this is a quote from David Lammy, as quoted in the Kyiv Post. The GRU spies are running a campaign to destabilize Europe, undermining Ukraine's sovereignty, and threatening the safety of British citizens, which they most certainly are. And it's not just British citizens that are in danger. Citizens from all over the world are in danger from the political agitation and destabilization efforts of the Russian Federation. There is no country on earth that spends $1.9 billion a year paying people to pretend they're Americans and Western Europeans on social media and make ludicrous, obscene Russian propaganda comments on your fucking Facebook, except the Russians. They spend the money and they get what they pay for. A lot of bullshit and a lot of disrupted lives based on Russian lies. Ukraine's security service. Now, that was not the only blow. It's a bad day for the GRU in Russia. No, and TikTok, you're absolutely right, Morgan. It's a bad day for the GRU in Russia. Not only were 2 of the units and 18 officers sanctioned by the British, but an additional couple dozen officers were doxxed by the Ukrainians. Now, this is one of my favorite stories of this war. This is a karma is a bitch story. So GRU Unit 29155, for those of you who follow the channel, you will remember these are the bastards who are accused of paying the Taliban for U.S. and allied service members' lives in Afghanistan. That's who these people are. These are the people who are thought to have developed the directed energy weapon responsible for Havana syndrome. These are the people responsible for the Novichok attack in Salisbury, etc., right? The attempted coup in Macedonia. I mean, the list goes on and on and on with these guys, what they've been up to. And now we know, thanks to information from the Ukrainian Military Intelligence Directorate, that these same guys were hosting a bunch of servers in Slovakia, thinking, I'm not sure what, that would keep them out of the reach of the GRU or the GUR here in Ukraine. It is confusing because in Ukraine, the Ukrainian kind of CIA is the GUR, while in Russia, it's the GRU. All right, just to be clear. So the GRU 29155 unit was operating these Slovakian websites where they were doxing, that is, revealing to the public the private identities and addresses of Ukrainian military folks and their families, whether at home in Ukraine or with refugee status in another country. And the doxers have now been doxed. The Ukrainians hacked the hackers, stole their data, and presented their faces to the public, as well as issued arrest warrants for crimes against the people of Ukraine. Right. So that's another blow to the GRU, which is nice to see. Now, somebody last night, and I apologize, I don't know who it was that said this. In fact, I don't know if it was in the live last night or if it was in a comment on a video. But if you are here and you are the person who said something about NATO could take Kaliningrad, last night when you said that, I kind of blew it off. I was just like, yeah, NATO could take Kaliningrad, but they're not going to. That's not going to happen. And I apologize because I didn't understand the context in which the question was asked. And what I learned today was that General Christopher what's his name? Donahue, sorry, not Mick, just Donahue, Lieutenant General Christopher Donahue, commander of European and U.S. forces in Europe and Africa, speaking at the U.S. Army's Land Euro Conference in Wiesbaden, Germany, just on Wednesday, said the words, "NATO can capture Kaliningrad in a time frame that is unheard of, faster than we've ever been able to do." And so that question about Kaliningrad didn't come out of nowhere, right? It grew out of this comment of General Donahue's at this security conference in Germany that's happening this week. So I don't doubt he's right. It was interesting to listen to him say this because he made it very clear. And this is not something that generally governments acknowledge publicly. We all know it goes on. But they don't tend to acknowledge it too publicly. And he acknowledged very publicly that the United States and its European allies have war-gamed the liberation of Kaliningrad. That there are plans in place for taking control of the Russian exclave. Now, just in case you're an American and you don't know what Kaliningrad is, right, because I didn't know when I came to Europe, I'll tell you right now, it's a tiny little piece of Russia that is not in Russia, right? It's like, for us, it would be like Puerto Rico or Guam. It's a territory of the United States. Kaliningrad is a territory of Russia, and it is wedged right between Poland and Lithuania, right? Poland and Lithuania. And that little piece of Russia is a problem for a lot of reasons. It's not landlocked. It's right on the Baltic Sea, Justin. So it's in fact, it's Russia's most important northern deep water port because it's the only one that doesn't freeze in winter, right? It is. It's a burr under the saddle, hardly. Grotland, please don't say things like that. We both know that there's a lot of other names you could give that place. All right. Now, so General Donahue said these things. He certainly believes them. I believe him when he says them. I have no reason not to. I just don't think that it's going to happen. It seems unlikely that that's going to be a turn that this war takes. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, also at this Land Euro conference, the Ukrainian website Brave One, which is all about military industrial development in Ukraine, announced a new program called Test in Ukraine. Foreign governments can now submit samples of their drones or technology to the Department of Digital Transformation and the Brave One group for testing in Ukraine, potentially for live battlefield testing. Now that means if you're a weapons manufacturer and you've developed some new capability for drone interception or ground drone support, you can send samples of that here. The guys on the front line will test it for you and send you back an analysis of how it's operating, or tell you that it doesn't. Okay. Bloomberg is reporting on the subject of the Russian economy approaching its implosion point, because it is. Bloomberg is reporting that the quality of the loan books is much worse than what the official data shows. According to Bloomberg, executives of at least 3 banks that the Russian central bank has identified as systemically important to the Russian economy have approached the Russian central bank, opening discussions for bailouts within the next 12 months because of the weight of bad debt crisis that they're facing. So Russian banks are increasingly being pressured by the government to give loans to defense sector manufacturers that the manufacturers will never be able to pay back at 20% interest. The government knows it, the banks know it, but they have to keep the money flowing to keep the war going. And it's all about to come crashing to a halt. These ghost payments that are being passed around on the books, it's going to all catch up with everybody. And it's my opinion, because the Russians have a historical habit. They hide all their losses until the last month of the year, and then during the final December budget reconciliation, all the skeletons come out of the closet at once. It seems impossible to me that the Russian economy is going to survive the December budget reconciliation process. All of these outstanding bad debts are piling up and rotting the economy from the inside out. Where are the Russians going to come up with the money to cover the bailout of the banks? They're going to have to raid the sovereign wealth fund. There's only $35 billion left in the sovereign wealth fund. Putin built that thing up to $150 billion with 700 tons of gold in it before the war. So he had a war chest to see him through. Who would have thought that that war would need a chest far bigger to carry it through 3.5 years of struggle? Okay, now, Fridays, everybody knows, Jade McGlynn, Dr. Jade McGlynn, PhD from King's College, London, goes on the talk show, or not talk show, we don't say that anymore, right? Podcast, sorry. Goes on the podcast, Ukraine the Latest. And she gives us the breakdown of what the Ukrainian partisan resistance has been doing behind the lines. Now, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what she said today. And for anybody interested in partisan activity behind the lines, I encourage you to listen to today's episode of Ukraine the Latest, because those guys do a great job. The best in the world, right? So Dr. McGlynn, the first thing that she went over today was really caught me off guard. And, listeners to this channel know I don't like talking about the stolen Ukrainian children. I don't like talking about it at all. Because as a parent, I think it is the most painful possible thing that could happen to you. It is a crime and a sin, not just against laws and man, but against nature itself, to tear children away from their parents, to raise them in your own image. That is evil, pure evil. And so Dr. McGlynn told us that it is summer. And so summer camp season is coming to Russia. But it's not the kind of summer camp you and I think of. It's not band camp, and nobody's going to be making leather lanyards. Instead, they will learn a history of Russia that never was. They will learn how to break down and reassemble an AK. They will learn how to fly drones, how to plan ambushes of the enemy, basic medic training for the battlefield, how to staunch a wound and use a tourniquet. These camps, while not mandatory inside Russia, parents are under a lot of pressure to send their children to these camps. As many as 56,000 students will go through a single camp inside Russia, and there are dozens of these camps. In the temporarily occupied territories, it's mandatory. In the temporarily occupied territories, a genocidal crime of brainwashing and indoctrination of Ukrainian children to grow up to fight their fellow Ukrainians in an imperial war for Mother Russia is happening every day. The psychological abuse of it is a nightmare beyond words. And this is happening every single day in the temporarily occupied territories. Ukrainian children under the brutal reality of Russian occupation are being re-educated into soldiers to fight against their brothers and sisters in Ukraine. It is a war crime and a sin. Now, Dr. McGlynn went on to give us a list of partisan attacks against mostly inside the temporary occupied territory. Remember that transformer that blew last week? And I was talking about, it was lighting up the sky on the video. It turns out that there were 2 transformer substations in Rostov that were burned, and that was part of an Atesh partisan group sabotage. Information was passed to Ukrainian intelligence for the successful targeting of Grad rocket systems in Donetsk. The assassination of the former Luhansk Russian-controlled governor and head of the LPR, that was an Atesh assassination. Russian military warehouse in Melitopol that burned, that was partisan activity. 5 Akhmat Brigade or Kadarovites were blown up in a car in Mariupol, and there was a strong trend of continued railroad sabotage with at least 7 incidences of trains being derailed, engines being burned, or relay cabinets being sabotaged. And so the really valiant efforts of the partisans who live behind enemy lines, who take the risks every day to get the information to the Ukrainian armed forces so that they can successfully strike the machine and men of the occupying force, cannot be understated or overstated, right? Cannot be overstated. I stand in absolute awe of the partisans and what they do. Okay, big thanks to M. Fuller. I don't know if she's here or not, but you beautiful, beautiful, beautiful baby, thank you so much for saving me from a night without a sponsor. It makes it real hard, boy, I'll tell you. So if anybody wants to sponsor anything next week, lives next week are all open for sponsorship. And thank you to our sponsor, M. Fuller. Thanks to Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces. Lars, who has the Discord server. And, of course, the moderators, best moderators on the Tickety Talk. And our special guest moderator, Feisty. So now, guys, that's my top line kind of news of the day stuff. Questions, comments, points of observation from anybody about anything. Thank you, Feisty. Thank you, Annette. Lars had a nap, so we're only at 76,000 likes, Lars. Thanks for nothing, man. Thanks for nothing. Oh, God. Russia, leave that kid alone. Thanks, Manda Bear. What's going on, kids? Brick in the wall. What are you doing this weekend, Scully? Anything good? My pleasure, Robert. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, Kath Brown. It's not going to be much of a Russia left once Ukraine gets all the other missiles. Let's hope from your lips to God's ear, Drain Man. You going fishing? Nice. Good luck. Good fishing. Ben Tilley says, I shouldn't give up my day job for singing. You know what? Just for that, I'm going to go out and become a singer. Nice, Kath. Another big cyber attack against Gazprom from Ukraine's GUR. Akron, the estimates of how long Russia can go vary. Lithuanian intelligence seems to think that Russia can keep this war up for another 3 years. Maybe they can. Good night, Chef Deb. My opinion is that the December budget reconciliation is going to begin a series of dominoes falling that's irrevocable and will eventually lead to the end. Now, how long that will take is anybody's guess, but you're going to see the shit hit the fan in December. 6 months might be right. I don't know, Drain Man. If Ukraine could, would they strike Moscow with missiles like Russia does with Kyiv? Not in the same way, Pugga Mahone. Kyiv doesn't care about the Kremlin doesn't care about targeting civilians in Kyiv, clearly. But there are lots of juicy military targets in and around Moscow. And I'm certain that's what the Ukrainians will strike. Dominoes are already falling, as Ethelred correctly says, and I do not disagree, in Syria, Iran, and Africa. Oh, you meant the amount, like if they had a 500 a night to send? One would think they would. Odessa is under a massive drone attack right now. Ha 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 ha. John Wazoo had a dream last night that North Korea invaded a collapsed Russia. Well, they're going to have to fight the Chinese for it. I think that's a possibility. Russia said if NATO attacked Kaliningrad, they would fire off all the nukes there at Europe. So what? Russia says they're going to fire off all their nukes at Europe every fucking day. Who listens to them? No, China's not in great shape either. That's one of the reasons they'd like to get their hands on Siberia and North Manchuria. Make no mistake. Yeah, nobody should be worrying about Russian nukes. That's all nonsense. Trump told Zelensky he needs to go on the offensive to make a difference on the battlefield. Oh my God, I'm so sick and tired of people telling the Ukrainians what they're supposed to do and what they have to do. Hit Moscow, take out the bridge. Motherfucker, we got 18 ATACMS missiles left. 18. Right? Nobody has sent all the weapons so that Ukraine could do all the shooting. Give me a fucking break. They gotta parcel these things out very carefully. Make sure that every one that they use counts for something meaningful. Yeesh. Yeah, Europe has nukes. I mean, really, let the Russians fire off some nukes. Let the British and the French fire back. 1 in 4 Russians lives in Moscow and St. Petersburg. 500 years of Russian history comes to an end in 42 fucking minutes. That's what happens. Right, the draft dodger is suddenly a military analyst, PH. Exactly. President Bone Spurs or whatever. Televangelist. Thanks for sharing the live. Somebody else was sharing the live a lot too. I meant to thank them as well. And I just forget now who that was. Ukraine is doing the best it can with what it's got. Exactly, Truth Hurts. Exactly. I absolutely agree with that assessment. The United States will turn Moscow to the 51st state. At the current rate, that might just be where we end up, which would be terrible. Hey, Leo Ring. Cadet Bone Spurs, not reporting for duty, jerk. Okay, it's about 7 minutes to the top of the hour. Let me again thank M. Fuller, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. I have no sponsors for next week. If anybody would like to sponsor live next week, please see the PayPal is in the description. Is it true Colombia help Ukraine now? Well, officially, I'm not aware of any gifts of weapons or aid from Colombia to Ukraine. It's not to say it doesn't exist. I'm just not aware of it. The place where Colombia, I think, intersects with Ukraine so powerfully is that Colombia has a mandatory conscription, right? A mandatory service period. So everybody has to go into the army in Colombia and get military training. And what they do, their training is for jungle fighting against the cartels. So you have all these people in Colombia with previous military experience under severe conditions of hardship who bring a great deal of value to the Ukrainian International Legion. And as I understand it, the contributions of Colombian soldiery on the front lines is extraordinary. They are nutso. And they are all over the place. A lot of Colombians in the International Brigade, yes, that's where they are. I'm sure you're right, Morgan. Well, thanks, Dignity. Also Brazilians. Maybe. The Colombians really have a reputation, though. The only Brazilian I met here was a humanitarian aid worker. Where do you sign up for the Legion? You can apply at the Ukrainian embassy in your home country. If your country does not have an embassy, consulate, or mission from Ukraine, then you can look next door at your nearest neighbor and go to your nearest Ukrainian embassy. Any reason why Ukraine can't recruit Afghanis? It's not a good match, Dignity. It's not a good match at all. I think Russia's much more likely to get those folks on their side. But theocratic nightmare jihadis aren't generally up for sale, even for sale, to fight for emergent Christian democratic nations. I mean, come on. That's a match made in hell. That's what that is. But for an autocratic regime like the Kremlin, you might get some, although frankly, the Afghanis hate the Russians as much as they hate the Americans. So I don't see a lot of Afghanis coming into this conflict on either side, even though there's lots of mercenaries there who are looking for work, I'm sure. That's an interesting question. I wonder if we've had any Afghanis captured in this conflict. I'm not aware of any. Nightshade, you heard anything about Afghanis in Ukraine? Yeah, me neither. Yeah, no, me neither. I'm not aware of any. Now Wikipedia claims. Let me see here. Oh, interesting. During the Soviet Union, Afghans were the largest foreign group studying in Ukraine. Oh, so there's a native population of Afghanis, right, of ethnically Afghan folks who grew up here after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1992. Many male students married Ukrainian women. Of course they did. Who wouldn't? So these are kind of naturalized Ukrainian citizens. Iranians have been found fighting for the Russians, which totally makes sense, right? They're close allies. The big updates, Ron, are the 18th EU sanctions package, the UK sanctioning of cyber units inside of the GRU, inside Russia, and the mega deal. Ooh, I didn't even talk about the mega deal, did I? I forgot to write it down. I'm so sorry. Zelensky says that he and Trump are ready to sell a bunch of drone technology to the U.S. and the U.S. ready to sell a bunch of weapons to the Ukrainians. So we shall see. We shall see. All right, kids, it's 1 a.m. here in beautiful uptown Kyiv. Air defense guns have fallen silent, thank God. And the skies seem quiet as well. Let's hope it stays that way. Big thanks to M. Fuller, who's the sponsor of tonight's live. Big thanks to Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces. Big thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, and to Feisty, Jay, Travis, Pete, and Maddie, best moderators on the Tickety Talk. Guys, I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv. If you like what I do here and you want to see me stay in Ukraine and keep this information flowing, please consider sponsoring a live or joining the Patreon. It's the Patreon that's my bread and butter, and that makes it possible for me to be here at all. So my sincere thanks to all the Patreon folks who make all of this possible. Thanks, Jackie. Oh, yeah, and everybody should give Nightshade a follow for his daily news updates on all things Ukraine. Thanks, Feisty. You too. It's Friday, Roy. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I am tired. You're not wrong, pal. You're not wrong. All right, everybody. Make it a great day. Have a good weekend.